So I've known our next guest for quite a while. She is a fighter, and she is running for governor of the beautiful state of Colorado. I've said for a while, I said this to my team, if Colorado was a little bit less Marxist, I would totally live there. I love Colorado. It's a beautiful state with wonderful people. But she is going to try to change that. I've endorsed her for governor of Colorado, and she had my back and the back of Turning Point USA for many years, and we've done a lot of amazing things together. And that is Heidi Ganahl, who is running for governor of Colorado. Heidi, welcome to the program.
Hey, Charlie, it's so good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
So I want to talk to you about a couple things about your race, but first I want to try to nationalize this for our audience. You're mentioned in this article in the Wall Street Journal, why Democrats are funding the GOP fringe, about how some of your opponents are actually getting benefit from Democrat super PACs. This is something that is now happening in more and more primary races across the country where Democrats are inserting themselves into our primaries. Tell us about this and tell about how it applies to your race.
Yeah, it's been crazy the last few weeks. We've found out that the Democrats are putting about $3 million into our race for governor, our primary race. So they're trying to pick their opponent, and they certainly don't want to run against me. That's very evident, as the polling looks great for me going up against one of the wealthiest guys in Colorado who's destroying our state here. And I am a fighter, as you said. I am ready to take it to the mat with Jared Polis and win back our beautiful state, but he wants to keep me from even getting through the primary by dumping millions of dollars into the Democrat Governors Association and another organization, Progress Now, that he helped found a few years ago.
Yeah, and so they run these ads that on a surface it looks like they're attacking the candidate, but they actually might be boosting the name ID. For example, they'll be saying something that your opponent's opposition to abortion and gay marriage is too conservative for Colorado. So it kind of has a dual attack on this, right? It boosts the name ID. So a super conservative might be looking at this and say, well, I want someone who's really conservative. Help us through that.
Yeah, on the TV, it says he is too conservative for Colorado, and it lists out all his conservative credentials, which most of us would agree with. And it makes it look like I'm the one attacking him when it's really the Democrats trying to play kind of a reverse psychology. They're doing this in races across the country, but here in Colorado, they're doing it in the governor's race, in the U.S. Senate race, where we have a good chance to take out Michael Bennet and help us win back the Senate, and also Congressional District 8. And we're starting to get the word out, but a lot of folks that vote don't watch TV a lot, don't listen to conservative radio, and it's going to be just, hey, I saw that guy's ad, and I agree that he's pretty conservative, and wow, I don't like that he's being attacked, so I'm going to vote for him. And then they're also doing mailers, probably, I think, $1 million at this point of mailers that are dropping that say, you know, that he's pro-life and Jared Polis is pro-choice and that he's the pro-Trump candidate, and just trying to boost his name ID, because name ID is a lot of what this is all about.
And this is an important thing. I just want everyone in our national audience to understand this. And it doesn't just pertain to Colorado. There's reports that this is happening in Illinois. This is happening in other places. I know for certain it's happening in Arizona, by the way, where we live, where Democrats will try and pick the opponent they think they can beat. And they don't want to run against you, Heidi. You've won statewide. You won statewide in 2016 when Trump lost. He won the presidency, but he lost Colorado. And they're really afraid that you might be able to actually give Polis a run for his money. I believe Colorado is actually in a realignment chapter right now. I think it's far more politically liberal than the people are. I think that it's being represented way out of line. Talk about how Colorado might experience a pretty significant red wave and why they're so afraid of your candidacy.
Well, I won a few years ago statewide in the regent race at the University of Colorado. We're one of 4 states that elects our board of regents, and I ran for at-large. And I beat this gal named Alice Madden, who is one of Jared Polis's right-hand people that helped run the blueprint, we call it in Colorado, which flipped Colorado from blue back in the mid-2000s. And so everybody said the same thing back then. He's got too much, or she's got too much money. She's got too much clout. You can't beat her. And we did. I beat her when Hillary Clinton and Michael Bennet took the state by quite a few points. And that's because I'm all about small business. I built Camp Bow Wow, the franchise company, the largest pet care franchise in the country. So we've got the dog factor. I'm a mom of 4. I have twins that are 10, a 12-year-old and a 26-year-old. I've been on the front lines of education reform, whether it's being a regent in higher ed and trying to bring some balance to crazy CU Boulder, but also opening charter schools and making sure that school choice is on the front lines of our discussion here. Because 60% of our kids in Colorado cannot read, write, or do math at grade level. We have one of the highest suicide rates across this country for kids and the second highest drug addiction rate for kids in Colorado.
And it's really interesting. This is something that we talked about last week, which is I believe there is a political realignment happening where Hispanics are starting to come in the Republican direction in record numbers. Now, Colorado, I believe, is 19% Hispanic, which is more than what people would guess if you just think of Colorado. Talk about how Hispanics are starting to defect from the Democrat Party. And I believe that's making Polis rather nervous. That kind of reliable Hispanic base is all of a sudden probably being put into question, isn't it?
It is. It is. The Hispanic voters in Colorado care a lot about family values and faith and community, and education is really important to them, that their kids get a good education. 5%, only 5% of Hispanic kids in Denver public schools can read at grade level right now. That report just came out a few weeks ago. Parents are really ticked off. We also have one of the highest inflation rates in the country right here, even compared to the national average. People can't afford to live in our state anymore. And Jared Polis thought it was a good idea to bring the new Green Deal to Colorado. And he's decimated our oil and gas industry here. And we produce some of the cleanest energy on the planet. But he'd rather us be not energy independent and go to Iran, Russia, and Venezuela to buy gas and oil, which is ridiculous.
And it's also unpopular. If I'm not mistaken, every time fracking bans get to the people of Colorado, they vote them down, don't they?
They do. And they actually voted it down. And then Jared Polis in the legislature a couple of years later put it through regardless that the people voted it down. They do that all the time. And now we have one of the most obnoxious, disgusting abortion laws in the country right here, abortion until birth. That is not how the people of Colorado are telling me they feel about that issue. So that's something we've got to go full on and turn back here.
So in closing, Heidi, how can people support you? And I want to just make another plug. I'm enthusiastically behind you 100%. I was at a dinner in El Paso County and some guy came up to me running and he says, Charlie, want to run? I said, I'm not talking to you. I'm behind Heidi. Have a nice day. And anyway, I don't remember who it was, but it was a nice enough guy. It's nothing against him. But Heidi, how could people support you? I've known you for many years. You'd make a phenomenal governor. And the fact that Democrats are running ads to boost your opponent tells me everything I already knew. But tell our audience about how people can get behind you. When is Election Day?
Thanks, Charlie. And I've loved being in the trenches with you, trying to push back on our liberal, crazy colleges across this country. But they can go to HeidiForGov, HeidiForGov.com. We need volunteers. We need donations. We need social media help. Oh, my gosh. Republicans need to get better about fighting back on social media.
Yes.
Out there would be great. But thank you so much. I'm going to win this regardless of all the millions they've dumped in. I'm a fighter, been through so much in my life. This is just one more roadblock to winning back our beautiful state of Colorado and making it sane again.